All righty. Hello, thank you for joining us once again on this lovely Friday evening to chat about to yours truly, King Jacob, with special guest, Miss Graham. So today we're going to be talking about the mental and emotional stress for a mother after she loses her child. So, Ms. Graham, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself to the world?
Good evening. My name is Saleemah Graham Fleming. I am recently a mother of a slain teen. My 15-year-old daughter was murdered April 5th, 2021. Her body wasn't discovered until April 29th, 2021. And since that time, myself and my family have struggled to find a new normal in addition to raising awareness around violence against our children, along with missing teens in the nation. And so thank you for having me today.
You're definitely welcome. You're definitely welcome. So, as we talk on the telephone about the situation that you went through and you're currently going through, can you take us back on when you discovered that your daughter was missing?
Okay. All right. So April 5th was the top of spring break in Richland District 2 in Columbia, South Carolina. And so that evening, my two oldest daughters came to ask if they can go right out, maybe a couple of yards away from my house to take pictures. Not unusual. No reason to say no. They're both teenagers, so they weren't going to be far. And at that time, I was under the impression that the housing complex that I lived in was under video surveillance and that the gates, well, at the time I knew that one side of the gate was not functioning. Still, feeling a sense of sanctuary, I allowed them to go. Only maybe about 45 minutes later, I come back to find that only one of my daughters returned. My 15-year-old daughter never returned again. Now, one thing I do want to highlight is that she did have a habit of leaving home. So when I initially made the call to law enforcement that night, they just kind of treated it as an incorrigible. But the only thing that was different was I kept saying something was different because before I called law enforcement, I attempted to reach out to my daughter. Normally, when I would reach out to her, if she was planning to do something else, she would send me the voicemail and send me a text. Only this time, the phone rung quickly the first time it went to voicemail, but every other time I called after, it went to voicemail. And I never got a text message. That alarmed me instantly. That was the first thing that really made me uncomfortable. And then after hours and hours through the night not hearing from her, I knew something wasn't right. So that morning, of course, that evening, I let her father know. And that morning, he was like, I'm making arrangements to come down because by now he hadn't heard from her either, which was extremely unusual. So within the first maybe 1 to 18 hours, we had already had several conversations with law enforcement, first finding out that she was put in as an incorrigible and just trying to rectify why she should have been put in as a missing person and going through the logistics of that, finding out new things about, just kind of how systems work that really don't serve our children, right? So up to between day 2 and 5, there were supports coming in from all around the country. Her father being a part of the new Black Panther Party, my church family, people in the community, even people involved in military that we didn't even know. They got boots on the ground. We have flyers produced first through Richland County and then through National Center for Missing Children. They sent a flyer as well. And so we were circulating flyers. And then maybe after day 5, Dad and I decided we should put a reward because now something is terribly wrong. Even though we knew the last people my daughter was with, it was almost just kind of suggested by law enforcement that perhaps she had been trafficked. So me as a mother, I guess I covered that base, and Dad was stuck on the basis of find the last people she was with and we'll find our daughter. Well, 24 days, well, actually 16 days later, it was told to us that Dad was right and that perhaps my daughter had been kidnapped. And, you know, I guess the saddest part was discovering that, you know, we were right, that, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. And the last people she was with were the people who were allegedly responsible for her death. But I guess here in the news, I guess I'll talk about that day. There was a meeting the night before, and we went in and talked to the sheriff, and he said he was kind of close, but he couldn't give us a lot of information. And that was maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the 28th. But what was really peculiar is on our way out, the victim advocate asked us to swab our cheeks. And we kind of knew something just wasn't going to be right. So we left out, and I had a conversation with Sharif, and he said, we're going to know tomorrow, dead or alive. And I remember the feeling that kind of rushed over me. And I come back home, and I'll just speak just specifically for me moving through the conversation, is that I didn't want to accept what picture was being painted for me, even from that moment. So I spent the night laying in my closet, just crying out to God. And neither me or Sharif could sleep that night. And we were called to come into a meeting, maybe about 7 o'clock that evening. We called to come into a meeting at 9 a.m. And when we got there, normally, you know, we had been in and out of the sheriff's department by now. So normally we go there and the procedure is to hand in your ID and you wait for someone to come and get you. They give you a visitor's tag, you go back. This time we were told we didn't need to hand in our ID. And so I said, no, Lord. And I just kept saying no in my spirit. No, no, no. My church had been fasting and praying, boots on the ground, you name it. They were doing it. We were really, really believing God for another outcome. And so having them standing with me helped me, looking in hindsight, it helped me to do all of the things that were seen, like speaking to press and, you know, being out. I didn't do a lot of the canvassing because it just took too much out of me to pass a flyer and see somebody say, oh, and then I'm a bucket of tears, you know, and having my other daughters with me, it was just too overwhelming. So thankfully, Sharif was the one that kind of spearheaded that. My church, Revealing Word Ministry, they kind of was really in the trenches, you know, with that. But I guess my task was dealing with law enforcement, trying to present as much evidence, dealing with those kind of things, you know, private investigation. Chandra Cleveland, she showed up, Jemiah Anderson. We had pretty much full support from community people in the community who actually do the work with helping to find missing children. But going back to that day and going to that meeting at 9 that morning, I got the girls off to school and I remember saying to Sharif, you have to meet me here so we can go. And so he was here, and we took two separate cars, but we walked in together. They didn't take the IDs. He looked at me, I looked away, because now I'm saying, no, 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 I'm not going to accept this. So we walk in the back, and there's people. As we're walking down the hallway, there's people coming out. Hey, how y'all doing? You know, they're not saying I'm sorry yet. They just, but you kind of know it's different than any other time that you've been in. So the door swings open, and I go in, and I'm looking for my daughter, because I'm hoping that they say they found her, or they're at least about to tell me to go in this hospital or something. But I see two people in there dressed in uniforms, and one uniform I cannot identify. But what was more strange is that the first thing I saw was a box of tissue. And I knew. So I swallow hard. I walk over, and he says, any other time we sit at his desk, he says, sit down here. And me and Sharif sit down, and it had to be the Spirit of God that just said, calm. There was a calm that just fell down on me, and it was almost like I was watching a TV show. And Leon Lott said, we have some information for you. We found your daughter, but it's not what we wanted. She was found murdered. She had been shot a number of times. And on that, Sharif kind of lost it, but I'm just sitting there. And then I hear him saying something, and then he motions to the coroner. And she's looking at me, and she looks worried. So she's darting her eyes back and forth between the other officers, and I'm just sitting calm. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that had to be God, because I had already kind of been losing it inside, but just still kind of being cool under pressure. But I heard the Spirit of God say, calm. And I just felt calm, and I can't really describe that. It wasn't until they announced that they're going to have a press release, and now I'm looking around like, wait a minute, my children are in school. I can't let the press release happen, and I'm here. So I dart out, and my first order of business is to get my girls out of the school so that they don't hear that their sister was murdered on social media or on, all kind of things. And then I get my 13-year-old daughter. And I told Sharif I couldn't get the words out to her, so he had to tell her. But to watch her reaction, all I remember is just kind of falling and feeling like my life was over. And it was this just tightness in my chest, and I just couldn't seem to get it together. But the next thing I remember is sitting in my car. And of course, now I'm kind of calming down, but my daughter kind of is hysterical. And so they're trying to kind of grab her from the parking lot of her school. And then it's like, you got to get it together. You can't do this right now. You have to get it together because your child needs you. You can't do this right now. And then it was just kind of like, seeming like a dream, like a nightmare you can't wake up from. And I think I was so shocked that all I kept saying was, all right, this is not happening. Yes, it is. It's real. No, it's not. Yes, it is. And I'm in my mind, but nobody knows this. I'm kind of in this conversation by myself, but I'm cool under pressure. And I think that's what people see. I have suffered so much loss that this is kind of conditioning for me, that I've just kind of become this way. But this, for me, is and was very, very different on the onset, and that I felt very, very much out of control. But the spirit of God and the power of God kept me looking somewhat in control. I don't know any other way to say it. I can't really make it fancy. You know what I mean? Because it's real. It's really my life. Like, this is really going on. And so the only way I know to tell it to you is the way it happened for me. I think subtly that day I had a few breakdowns. My pastor came right away. And it was like, no. And I guess I'm seeing these peaks of people reminded me that it's, it's real. And then I turn it on because I have to see it. I have to see it so it can be real to me somewhat. Mm-hmm. But then I remember asking the coroner, can I see her? And she said, I'm so sorry, but you can't. And sitting here looking at the press conference, I kept hearing that. And slowly I just started breaking down, because it's like, they're telling you this. And this is supposed to be real, but how do you know? You're her mom. You're supposed to be able to at least see her, right? But in this case, right, because her body was so badly decomposed, no one can really view her. She had to have an autopsy, of course, because of the manner in which she was killed. And then she was placed in something called the Ziegler case that goes inside of a casket. And so both are locked, and there's no way to view her. So I've had those thoughts of, maybe they had it wrong. Maybe it's not her. And I've had those thoughts of, well, maybe one day, maybe this is trafficking, and maybe one day she will show up. But then you get the death certificate, and now the autopsy report is coming, and those details are going to be there to tell you it's your child. And that's the devastation, Then now I go in her room and I can smell her. And it's like, she's not coming back. And being completely honest, I'm just still in a state of shock. I get moments of like utter sadness. I have never cried like this before. But I'm so shocked. I'm so shocked. I'm devastated. I'm shocked. And I'm utterly sad. And I know for some parents, it's a longer period, right? Because there's like stages to it. It's denial and, bargaining and all these other things. But for me, I spent a lot of time in disbelief about what happened. And because it's just this really big question as why? 11 times? Why? I mean, she wasn't in gangs or anything like that. It's presumed to be gang related, but I know as her mother, it's not on the side of her being involved in a gang. So I want to know why. Why? And I think that's why I'm in such a state of shock. It's because I have to know why. I want to know what provoked this. So, I mean, day to day, it can look anything like struggling to get up and feed myself, or even shower, to getting up, getting involved in all of these other efforts we have surrounding this, trying to make sure that this doesn't happen to another family, being completely driven. It just looks different every day. For most, I'm sure, another mom might give you a different answer. I have my moments where, I'm like, I can't do this. This is too much.
Right.
But then I have moments where it's like, you need to get up and fight.
So with that being said, that's a that's a lot to process and situation. Um, is wow. It's deeper than most people think. So during that process, um, after you found out that your daughter was murdered, and after you found out that she was um, shot 11 times, what was the process mentally, emotionally, and how did you um, seek that spiritual growth with God to help you get through?
Well, first of all, I thank God for prayer. I thank God for prayer. I thank God not so much for my own prayers, but for the prayers of the righteous. You know, one translation
Right.
says the prayers of the righteous are effective. People I don't even know have been praying for me. I get people who might inbox me that I've never had a conversation with that said, I woke up this morning and you were on my mind. That is the Spirit of God prompting people to hold me up in prayer. That's a privilege. When I heard it, I was like, thank you. But when I start to see what it's doing in my life, I feel favored by God in the process. That even though this is a bad situation, God has me on his mind enough that he's been dropping me in the spirits of very strong believers all over the world that I don't even know. And they have been praying for me. And I remember Pastor Jerry Carter out of New Jersey said, if you ever want to know how God feels about you, look at the grace over you, uh, the provision before you, the mercy under you, and the people around you. And that stuck with me. And just in the process, I can't tell you how thankful I am. People sometimes think they offended me and they're not. I'd be so happy to hear from these people that they really are thinking about me. Granted, there are people who might be cliche saying they're praying for me. I'll take it all because they didn't have to say that much. I'm grateful.
Right.
I'm so grateful. I have never experienced this amount of support during grief and loss in my life. And in the last 11 years, I have lost just about everybody near and dear to me. My parents, my brother, my niece, my favorite aunt, uncle, boom, 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 all in a matter of 11 years. Now my daughter. And God knew I would need this support. And I'm just grateful that I don't feel forgotten. I might have periods where I might feel alone in my grief, but I don't feel forgotten by God because so many people have been showing me so much support. And at first, I was
Mm.
just so overwhelmed. I was just like, God, I can't believe so many people are being so supportive. I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful. Because I know it's the only reason why I'm able to keep going. My daughter was everything to me.
Mm.
She was everything to me. If anybody knows me, they know how much I love my girls. And my Sanamahari was my firstborn child. She was my promise. I was told I would never have any children. But God, I'm just grateful. Really grateful.
All right. So during this process, you're dealing with it mentally, emotionally, and the spiritual aspect is helping you get through. So with you trying to hold together and trying to be strong mentally and emotionally. Your other two girls were going through it mentally and emotionally as well. And so you as a parent, how did you pull yourself together to see about those other babies?
Well, I don't pull myself together. God is doing all of it. God is doing all
Mm.
of it. People say, oh, you speak so well. I don't know half of the stuff that I say. I pray and I stand up and I speak. That's it. I'm not here for any fanfare. This is not what I wanted to do at all. But I have decided that I'm going to give God a yes. And whatever he want to do in the process of this, I'm yielded, and I'll do it until he don't want me to do it. No fanfare, not trying to shake up nothing. I'm trying to bring about a lot of change, in terms of how these children have resources and how they're being treated if they're incorrigible. That's a big thing, but with helping my two girls process, of course, I have a very, very supportive church family. I can't say that enough. My church, Revealing Word Ministry, I've never been a part of a church like this. And I'm so glad that God put me right in with these people before this happened to me. Because I don't have a diss for any other church, but I just don't know that I would have got this level of support. I don't know that I would have gotten that. So I'm grateful to be connected to this body of believers because they really do show up. They really do. And so we've had everything from therapy sessions at our church, to the girls having individual therapy. And it is a process because my 13-year-old is totally traumatized. Totally. My 5-year-old, it might be a day I might walk in and she might be on her sister's floor, curled up crying. Last Saturday, she walked out of the room. It was about 11 o'clock. She had a blanket draped over her and she's under it sobbing. And she's so small that, having in-depth conversations is kind of off the table for her. So she does a lot of play therapy with a therapist. Of course, we pray. But that kind of support, just getting people to rally around people that have been a part of our village that'll say, hey, I want to take her somewhere. Let me take her to the park. My godmother, she'll come. She was here yesterday. I have a very strong village and I'm really, really blessed to have it. My family, nobody's really kind of leaving us alone this time. And so that, in addition to the prayers of the righteous, God prompted me to say, I don't know what's going to happen that day. I might wake up and the Spirit of God might say, all right, don't eat until 12 o'clock. Just pray in the Spirit. Okay. And I'm just trying to be as sensitive as I can to whatever God is wanting to do. Because I recognize the place that I'm in is so not where I want to be that I know it had to be God assigning me to it.
Mm. Ooh. Have mercy. So a question that I gathered, from a lot of people, I was talking to my mother and my sister, and I was telling them who was coming on, and I was telling the story. My mom said, my God, I seen this on the news. She said, God bless her heart and her soul. God bless her family. I'm praying that God's going to cover them and keep them. And so we was talking, and I'm sitting in my mother's living room, and I got my head like this, and I'm thinking, and a question comes to mind, because a lot of people can't feel your position because they're not in it. So my thing is, what does a mother do when she's seeking for answers, and how does she move forward daily when she has no answers?
Prayer, and more prayer. Anybody in this situation, you are not going to be all right if you try to do it on your own. If you do not connect to God, a God of your understanding, you are not going to be all right. You need God, flat out. I'm not speaking on behalf of nobody but Saleemah. And you need God. And without him, it's not going to go well. It will go awry at some point. You can't do anything like this on your own. Losing a child, it's a devastation you can't really verbalize. It's a devastation. And the way my friend Toby Riley, he one of the strongest people I know, he said, you have now become a part of a committee that nobody wants to join.
My God.
Gaining strength from other parents have been helpful for me. People who have been, my girlfriend Sonia from Jersey, Sonia Rogers, she has really, really been helpful. Toby Riley, other parents who have lost their children brutally, they have been coming to me from all over the country, sharing their pain, letting me know I'm not alone. I want to be able to do that for somebody else. We are nothing on our own. We do nothing on our own. We do nothing on our own. We need each other. It's a 7.6 billion of us here for a reason. We do nothing on our own. Ministry, people. Service, people. However you want to word it, it's all about people.
It is. It is. It is. And, you know, me and you, we touched base on what you went through emotionally and mentally. And, you know, you did say about therapy. And I want to touch base on how us as Black people, when we go through something that's really detrimental to our mental health, to our emotional health, and to our spiritual health, we don't understand how important, you know, therapeutic sessions are. And so I just want you to touch base on how important the therapy was for you and your family.
Well, I have to be honest in saying that we had been in therapy for years, my family. You know, I mentioned the grief and loss we've been experiencing, the onset being with my mother in 2011. So I had the girls in therapy with that because I was kind of the person caring for everyone. You know, I mean, with the exception of my aunt, you know, my uncle, my niece, people like that. But my parents, you know, and my brother, you know, just being kind of the go-to person in those instances. And what we don't recognize as parents often is that when we do those things and we are serving people and we're that go-to person, that we're taking our children through those things with us, no matter what their age is, because our children have a spiritual umbilical cord connected to us. So even if you're an older person who's the carer, you're the one who's always the go-to person in the family, your children are picking that up. Some of the stresses you might be experiencing, your children will pick it up. And sometimes it comes off as resentment, or it might come off as anger. Now you're bickering with your child because in a lot of times, you know, depending on, you know, variations of ages, children start to feel like you're forgetting about them because you're so busy serving auntie or mama or whoever, you know, and not recognizing that, you know, you're not deliberately outcasting your child, but you have been called to serve to something, you know. And sometimes even people in ministry, you know, they are on assignment and they're fulfilling that assignment, but the children are being affected. So we have to constantly check in with our loved ones. The Bible tells us that charity starts at home and is shared abroad. And so we have to constantly check in. I'll be honest to say that when it specifically happened with my mother, I didn't check in with my children a lot. And so I didn't recognize that they had gone through a level of trauma with losing my mother too. Watching my mother go from taking them to the corner store with lollipops to being in a bed, not being able to talk for 6 weeks. You know, that took a lot out of them. And so when I started to recognize that they had gone through their thing too, therapy became a thing. but where I started to see where it was more than what I needed to do with therapy, because my daughter mentioned to me at one point, Mom, yeah, you put us in therapy and you were caring for us or whatever, but what happened to the therapy that I needed with you? And the light bulb went off, and I started to try to undo a lot of things. But this happened last year.
Mm.
So now fast forward a year later,
Wow.
my daughter's been murdered, you know? And so now I'm looking in hindsight at a lot of things. And I'm learning that while some things were done with the best intention, it probably wasn't done the right way. You know, there's a quote that says, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. And so we have to be intentional. And that's
That's
why
right.
prayer is so important, because sometimes you think that something is right. There's a way that seems right to a man that ends in death. That's in the Bible too. And you can be sincerely wrong. And then there's those moments where you did everything you could and things went awry. Those are times when you really need to just be before God with the acceptance of that thing. Because if you know in your heart and in your soul and in your mind that you did what God wanted you to do in a situation, however it turns out, God will give you peace if you go to him for it. He will. I'm a witness.
So, Queen, you have Miss Tanisha Renee. She's tuning in from Charlotte, North Carolina. And she says trauma on top of trauma. Even your hurt and shock had to readjust so you can focus on someone else's emotions. Prayers and blessings to you, Queen. So
Bless you, Queen.
that's on the live feed from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Bless you, Queen.
And she says she exactly know how you feel, because 5 years later her firstborn son was murdered, and she screamed not knowing why, how somebody could murder her child. And so she definitely coincide with what you're saying. And so yeah, it's a lot of mothers and fathers out there that have experienced this, and and they're still looking for answers, but they've still had that covering over them, that spiritual healing and that covering over them. And so many people from all across the globe that never laid eyes are praying for them. So, shout out to all the people that's giving the prayers and the blessings, because we all need it every day. And
Amen.
so, Queen, I want to chime in on this subject. Well, we also talk about how the fathers feel about the trauma and what they face as men when it comes to their children, and why so many fathers see themselves in a lot of situations when it comes to their children, but they feel like they didn't protect their child, and they feel the regret of not being there in that particular moment or that particular situation. And a lot of them, find it hard to move forward and even to look the mother in the face, knowing that they didn't protect the child. So me and you did talk about that, over phone conversation. So I want you to chime in on that, as far as you see what's your perspective of the black man when they face this challenge, or farther
Okay.
that goes, any man.
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is, at the memorial for my daughter in New Jersey, I wanted to make public to my daughter's father, Sharif Amenhotep. I said to him, you didn't fail. And I hope I'm in order in saying this. But I had a conversation with him, and he shared with me, and I've been knowing Sharif since I was 5 years old. So there's a lot of history, with us. Our families are very close, things of that nature. But he shared with me that, he didn't know how to be a father. And he gave some tidbits about some of the things he experienced from his own father. And so he was telling me in a nutshell that he just kind of did the best that he could. And I think a lot of men,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what color they are, I think a lot of men just kind of, when they don't have that foundation and they don't have an example of fatherhood, that they either do the best they can, right? Or they do absolutely nothing. And so what I'd say to fathers in a situation like this, to the father who was involved and the child decided to choose something abstract, maybe, the child was wayward or something, whatever the circumstances was, we really don't care when they pronounce your child dead. I don't care what your child did. When they come and tell you that your kid is deceased, this still your baby. And so for that father, I would not word it as a woman, and there's plenty women out here who feel like this, okay? But I would not word your feeling a failure. See, a failure is when you just don't do anything or you just give a little effort, right? And, oh, it just doesn't go over well. Well, no, let me rephrase that, because I think what I said to you earlier is that failure is just doing nothing, right? So when you go to school and you don't do the assignment, you fail,
Right.
because you put no effort in it. You put no initiative in it. You might get a failing grade, but to fail means you just didn't do absolutely nothing. In this context, that's the way I want men in particular to view that. So for the father who was hands-on, co-parenting, and feels like a failure, I want to let you know that it's not failure that you're experiencing. It's probably more like helplessness or hopelessness, because Black men in particular have been fighting against or fighting for something all of his life from a little boy, right? You better not cry. You better not do this. You got to be strong. You got to do this. And so those things translate into, when you don't do those things, you fail. That's not necessarily the case. And so for any man who has showed up for his child and this has happened, I need you to know from a woman that you are not a failure. You did not fail your child. Now, for the man who might feel some regret for not showing up in a way that he know he should have, I would say fix it now. There are ways to fix it now. This might have been your only child, or you might have other children, but you have an opportunity to fix it and change it. Don't stay the way that you were. Learn from it and move on. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Everybody has a why to why they do everything. That's why we shouldn't judge each other. But forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Even if you have to, therapeutic stuff, write a letter to your child. Repent. But move on. I read something today talking about the difference between Holy Spirit conviction and being tormented by the enemy. God is not going to have you wallowing in self-pity. That is not his way. If he said, if any man be in Christ, he's a new creature. Old things passed away. Behold, all things be up. Behold, boom, just like that. So forgive yourself. But if I can add anything to this, I'd say this. We need you. Specifically, Black men, we need y'all so bad to start showing up for us. Sometimes I look at certain things and my heart be so broken, like, wow, why don't they love us? Why don't they respect us? They come from somebody that probably look just like us, but they don't respect us. Why? And I get it that there's some people who don't respect themselves, but that's never an excuse for you not to be respectable. It's never an excuse for you. Nobody's going to make me into somebody that I'm not. I'm going to be who I need to be, regardless to who somebody else is going to be. So I want to charge men, start showing up, standing up, stalwart. Do something that's honorable, noble, respectful, something that will make people want to respect you. And that starts by being accountable. We need you more accountable. It shouldn't be that people are shooting in these neighborhoods and killing these kids and our men are not showing up and saying nothing. That would never happen in another community. Why us? I need answers. And if there is no logical answer, let's start seeing some accountability. We need to do that.
Right, right. So with that being said, I just want to say to all the fathers out there that go through what they go through, as far as what society puts them through. Um, you got to you got to hold your head up and just understand who you are, because knowing your identity, as a man is one thing, but knowing your identity as a man and as a father, that's a whole different type of ball game. And so it's queens like you that definitely lift us up and encourage us and keep pushing us. So I just want to say salute to you for breaking it down and giving some insight on how you feel about the fathers that feel like they have a lot of regret and feel like they failed. So we want to get into and chime in on your position as a mother, and you gave me some homework to do. You don't even know it. So you gave me some homework to do, along with you and Miss Chantel Evans and um, Miss Alicia Coleman, and y'all definitely y'all pushed me hard. You know what I'm saying? And it's funny how I was connected with Alicia all my life, and she ended up being your best friend. And I seen your live feeds on her timeline, and so that's how I was able to really get in contact with you. Through me and her connection, and through you and her connection. So we did discuss, and I want the audience at home to listen to it, because I have a lot of cousins out there that's female, just have children. I have brothers that have kids, and I got homeboys that got daughters and sons. So I really want you guys to listen out there, please. There are 79,000 girls missing in the U.S. alone. And in our state of South Carolina, that's reported missing, and only reported, there's 4,300 missing in South Carolina alone. Now, we're not a big state like Florida, Texas, California, New York, but to be to be at home and that there's almost 5,000 girls missing, that's a lot. And so I want you to chime in on, because the kidnapping is one thing, but human trafficking is a billion-dollar business. And so, and you was telling me about your organization, and that you're about to get it up and running and stuff like that. So with the numbers that you gave me, that's projected to be on paper documentation, and with what you plan to do with your organization, I just want you to chime in how your organization will interact with those numbers that you gave me, to actually give parents, give the education system, give the local community centers, the churches, give them a better insight what's really going on, that they may not even be aware of, or they don't really understand how they can get involved.
Okay. Well, the first thing, speaking to, and I think I want to kind of keep it home for right now, in this conversation about the 4,300 missing girls in the state of South Carolina. It's flabbergasting. I was totally shocked to learn that. And I have to repent, because as a parent, those are the things we need to be up on, especially when we have our children going out. They go to skating ring. You need to know kind of the lay of the land, where you know what's going on. And so I'm guilty of that, on the onset of all of this. And so this situation forced me to be educated on the numbers and what was going on. Now, fast forward, because we spent so much time looking for my daughter as a missing person and not, abducted, I was able to rub elbows with a lot of private investigators, and just kind of like learning that they do what they do so effectively because they have relationships, throughout the country with each other, and they have different strategies, and a lot of times they do the work for free for families. And I said, wow, how much more could they be doing if they had monetary support from the community? And so the first thing we want to do is I really want to start trying to develop a national walk on what would have been my daughter's 16th birthday. Her 16th birthday would have been August 4th of this year. August 4th falls on a Wednesday. Most people are at work. So our team came up with the idea that perhaps we should do the walk August 7th through August 8th. That will give people the opportunity in church organizations to get involved, where they would raise the funds and they would have to identify. Well, let me go back. In terms of raising the funds, we would charge $16 for registration for anyone in the community, in those communities, that would commit to walking 24 blocks, 24 miles, or 24 laps, depending on where you are. And this would be kind of signifying the 24 days my daughter was missing. All of the funds given at the registration would be donated to an identified private investigator or law enforcement entity in that area. No funds would come back to me. We would be doing this just to raise money to support the people who are doing the work until we can get some laws passed and get some governmental assistance financially on these things for law enforcement, because we understand things take money. We would want to support the people who are already doing the work in kind, who won't ask you for money, but they have people staying up all night long, staking out at hotels, people resourcing all around the country. They're finding girls in New Jersey and finding girls in Florida and Atlanta. And these people sometimes don't sleep for days, and they're doing this work for free. So we want to show them some solidarity, that we stand with them in their plight to try to bring the numbers down with the missing children and the missing girls in our state. And so that's what we really want to do. And what I have a huge ask, only ask I'm going to ask for tonight, is that if you know of an identified agency who will be willing to participate, they can just email me. In a few days, I'll have the link up here. We're starting a nonprofit organization called MOST, Mothers of Slain Teens. And that is where we'll start to outsource with giving support to these families, because we understand that the state of South Carolina will only give you $6,500 for burial. But the average mother, I speak just for mothers, we have a lot of anxiety with putting our children in the ground. If we could do the mausoleum, we would want to do that. And what most would be building that support for those families, for when mom can't go to work for 6 months because she can't get her mind around it. Average job is only going to give you maybe 6 weeks if you get FMLA. What about the mom who works 3 or 4 different jobs part-time because she has 5 kids and that's the only way that she could work, because she has to work around the schedule of the kids going to school? What about that mom? What about the mom who doesn't have support, who doesn't have anybody who will go out and help her look for her daughter? What about the mom who's given up because it's already been 9 months and she hasn't seen her child? She doesn't know anything. And I'm so tired of people having an opinion about how these girls are going missing. You don't know the backstory. You don't know what these families deal with in-house. For you to assume that, they got to be leaving for some, you don't know. And half of the time that's coming from somebody with a lack of experience. And that's not fair to do. Because sometimes these parents are really parenting their children. And we're not our children's only influence. Our children get linked up with people all the time. And if it looks fun, remember, the child's frontal lobe is not fully developed. And the part that is exposed is the part that wants to take risks. Our children need our support. They're not there yet. And for these men out here who might be thinking this is all right because the girl looks older, a child cannot consent. If you're having sex with somebody that is younger than you, a kid, it's not consensual, it's rape. Let that sizzle in your spirit. I'm sorry, I get a little upset about that because I don't understand why. And this goes back to us really needing our kings in our communities to have some accountability and stand up. Nothing makes a woman happier than to have security of the men in her life. Nothing makes her feel more safe. And if we had more of that, we have less of this. We have to stop being sold to the highest bidder on everything. We cannot be so morally corrupt that everything is driven by money. When are we going to have a standard that says, if this is going to hurt another person or if it's going to put me in danger, then I just can't do it? When are we going to do that? And then we wonder why our children think it's okay to shoot up communities. We don't have a standard. We have to put that standard back in place. I think I'm done with that. I'm sorry.
You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. And message from the president of Unique Blessings nonprofit organization, which I serve on the board of directors of. She says, "Thank you for sharing. This is very important information, Queen. Unique Blessings are here in full support. We are all in with you. Like I told you earlier this week that we all in with you. And so I'll definitely have her to reach out to you, and we're definitely all in. So, Queen, this is it's a lot. It's heavy. So, to be in your position, I know it's a lot, but to hear this and to try to wrap my mind and my head around this is very heavy. And so, but I really, really, really want to thank you for taking the time to come and have this conversation with me and the Unique Blessings nonprofit organization. It was very needed because a lot of times in the state of South Carolina, people don't really know what's going on with these girls. And, and another thing with that, it's a lot of gun violence going on now in the state of South Carolina, which, people used to be like, man, I want to come to South Carolina, live. Y'all just peaceful down there. And now it's not that much peace. It's just like I was reading on Wednesday morning that 2 11-year-old little girls got killed doing a drive-by. Somebody was shooting up a house. One got shot in the face and died, and then the other one is in the hospital right now as we speak. And we're praying for her, and we hope that she make it through. We have to do something to protect and save our babies, because these babies don't actually be here, but it's up to us to try to protect them as well. So just want to let you give your shout outs, Queen, before we close it out this evening. Shout your people out and any announcements that you might want to make. And I'll let you have the floor right now.
Okay, big shout out to Revealing Word Ministries, my church. I love y'all so much. I love y'all so much. To my family, my friends, people who have been supporting me in prayer, I really, really appreciate you. Continue to support Amenhotep LawOnChange.org. We really need your support. This is about changing laws and putting resources in place for our children, reestablishing our communities nationwide. This is not just about South Carolina. It's not just about what I want to do. This is not an I work. This is a we work, and we do nothing without your support. So thank you so much. Be on the lookout. Website is coming soon. www.mostoutreach.org. Please be on the lookout. By the end of the week, it should be up and running. You'll be able to purchase apparel, etc. Book anyone from the team to speak. I don't do this alone. It's not all about me. And so I wanna ask about the young lady who's still in the hospital, and I wanna be able to pray for them offline, if that's okay. And if you can't give it to me here, if you can just send it to me. We want to be praying for the child that's still in the hospital and the bereaved family of the 11-year-old girl, because prayer is what's going to hold these families together. Prayer is going to do it. Nothing else. And we need the support of every believer. Pray for these people. It is not easy. You don't work through this off of human strength. You don't. And so we want to be able to support them. And so please be on the lookout. the walk again, August 7th through the 8th of this year. We want to do a national walk. Please email, go to the website at the end of the week, and you'll be able to identify there any non-profit or anyone doing the work with looking for missing children. We will have accountability with notarized letters, and you will have to send in your roster and give an account for the money you collect. Please, please, please operate in integrity. We are not trying to come up off of anybody. And so we just want to help. We just want to help. We have to stop this. And I want to thank you for the opportunity again, King. Thank you so much.
Not a problem, not a problem. And I will definitely send that to you offline because the families need all the prayer support they can get. And so, Queen, I just want to say it's been a pleasure having a conversation with you, talking with you. And I'm here for you, and you'll be hearing from Unique Blessings Nonprofit this week. I'll try to set up a conference call with you and the president of the organization. And so we can talk about how we can collectively work together as one and move with a purpose, you know, and passion to really save the youth and save our communities. So thank you so much. And you have a good evening. And to the rest of you, y'all have a blessed and safe weekend. Much love from King Jacob and the Chatterbox. Peace and blessings.
Thank you.